Welcome to American History Lesson 20, The Roaring Twenties. Our lesson objectives are identify and understand what foreign influences impacted American politics, identify the influence and impact of unions upon America, identify how the United States foreign policy changed the post-World War I, identify important technological advances that impacted America. The Red Scare and American Paranoia. Political problems in Russia affected the United States after World War I. Massive protests led the Russian Tsar, or King, Nicholas II to step down from the throne in March 1917. In November of that year, political radicals seized the government and established the world's first communist state. Soon, this new government issued a call for worldwide revolution. Its leaders wanted to overthrow the capitalist system and abolish private property. About 70,000 people, called Reds, joined the new Communist Party in the United States. Even though their numbers were small, their radical threats caused fear and concern among the American people. To slow the Red Scare that was spreading across the nation, Attorney General Mitchell Palmer tried to calm people's fears by forming a new agency in the Justice Department to find and punish those people thought to be radicals. His agents arrested communists, socialists, and anarchists, people who opposed any government at all. The agents often disregarded the rights of the people they arrested. Hundreds of radicals were sent out of the country without a trial. Palmer never found evidence of a conspiracy to overthrow the government, and these fears slowly faded. Many suffered in the wave of panic, however. An important case involved two Italian immigrants, Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Benzetti. The radical pair were arrested for double murder during a robbery in Massachusetts. Although the case was not strong, they were convicted and executed. Protests poured in from around the world. Life in America's unions. The post-war period saw a return of labor troubles. A strike of Boston police officers was forcefully put down by Massachusetts Governor Calvin Coolidge. Violence erupted over a massive 1919 steel strike, and workers demanded the right to unionize. Steelmakers labeled the workers as communists, and the strike was broken in 1920. Later, a church group revealed the harsh conditions in steel mills. Embarrassed steelmakers shortened the workday to 8 hours. However, the steel workers still had no union. United Mine Workers President John L. Lewis won pay increases for coal miners. Asa Philip Randolph successfully organized an African American union of railroad workers. Unions were not generally successful in the 1920s, however, as union membership dropped from about 5 million to about 3.5 million workers. The United States and the world stage. In the presidential election of 1920, Republicans nominated Warren G. Harding, a pleasant man of little ability. Harding and Calvin Coolidge, his vice president, swept into office in a landslide victory. In the 1920s, the United States promoted world peace. A 1921 conference in Washington produced a historic agreement among 5 major naval powers to dismantle some of their naval ships. For the first time in modern history, nations had agreed to reduce their weapons. In 1929, 64 nations signed the Kellogg-Briand Pact. In doing so, each nation promised to not settle problems by starting wars. The U.S. was becoming isolationist again by pulling away from world affairs. However, it remained tough with Britain and France as the countries owed the U.S. a lot of money from World War I. They could not pay off U.S. loans because Congress had enacted a tariff so high that it made it impossible for them to sell their goods in the United States. The two countries pressured Germany to meet its payments for reparations, but Germany's economy was destroyed. A series of U.S. loans to Germany left Britain and France angry. Dislikes of foreigners resulted in a new immigration law. With the Emergency Quota Act of 1921, Congress limited the number of people admitted into the country each year. A revised version passed in 1924 cut the flow of immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe. It put a stop to Japanese immigration altogether. In 1929, Congress voted to further limit the number of immigrants admitted each year. President Harding's cabinet choices were a mix. While some of his cabinet appointments were distinguished, many of them were soon found to be engaged in bribery and corruption. The biggest scandals involved tracts of public land called Teapot Dome and Elk Hills. The lands held oil, and Secretary of the Interior Albert Fall secretly leased the land to 2 oil companies. He received money and property in return. Amidst rumors of corruption in his administration, Harding died. Calvin Coolidge became president. Technological advances of the 1920s. American business was transforming American society, and the automobile led the way. America became a car culture. By the late 1920s, about 80% of all motor vehicles in the world were in the United States. States and cities built an elaborate network of new roads and highways. As cars made it possible for workers to live farther from their homes, cities grew larger. Cities in Ohio and especially Michigan grew as major centers of automobile manufacturing. The airplane industry grew as well. Planes carried the nation's mail, and passenger service was introduced. Another major change was the spread of electricity. Whereas electricity had been found only in central cities before, it now stretched to the suburbs. Although farms still lacked electric power, electrical appliances such as radios, washing machines, and vacuum cleaners began appearing in homes across America. To convince people to buy these new appliances, businesses adopted new methods of advertising. No longer content only to give information about products, they now used ads to sell an image. Widespread advertising meant that certain brand names became nationally known. Radio provided advertisers a way of reaching huge audiences. Fun fact, to own a radio during the 1920s would cost you around $120 for the radio, the antenna, speakers, and batteries. In today's money, this would be around $1,500. Trouble on the horizon. The wealth that business was generating seemed unstoppable. National income rose from $58 billion in 1921 to $83 billion in 1929. This prosperity masked societal problems. First, the business scene was not completely healthy. As workers produced more in the same number of hours, businesses grew, sometimes absorbing smaller ones. Chain stores spread across the nation. With this growth, the difference in income between business managers and workers grew wider. The mining companies, railroads, and farms were especially suffering. Second, consumer debt rose to alarming levels. Businesses helped promote consumer spending by allowing customers to buy on credit. By making payments low and spreading them over a long period of time, businesses made it easy for consumers to purchase all the goods that businesses were producing. What next? Take the time to go back and review the lesson on your own. After your review, complete the lesson review for the lesson and submit for grading. Remember, your submission should follow all the rules for standard written English. All submissions must be written in your own words and sources used cited at the end. How to cite sources in APA format. When you reference a source within an APA-style paper, whether it is using a direct quote, repurposing an image, or simply referring to an idea or theory, you should insert an in-text citation, the author's surname, and the date of publication within parentheses, straight after a direct quote. CitationMachine.net will assist you in creating citations.